and boom goes the dynamite.
Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome into a new edition and start of a new week here on Daily Dive. I'm your host, Renee Washington. We've got plenty to get into because this weekend's games did not disappoint. Well, as always, just want to give you guys a quick reminder to be sure to hit that subscribe button. Keep up with Daily Dive across all social media at Daily Dive Relax. We've got top stories to get into. We've got recaps. We also have to give out our 3 stars of the weekend. Mike's got some bets that he had correct that he has to play out. And then we're going to be closing the show with a dear colleague and friend of mine and a guest, Chris Pomay, who hosts his show Live with CDP. So before we get into our top story, I got to welcome in Producer Mike. Producer Mike and I have been breaking down everything going on around the league, and we have to start off the show with our top story presented by the Daily Dive Store. Knighthawks remain undefeated, knocking off the Buffalo Bandits 15-12. It was an incredible game. It was back and forth, had the feel of a postseason game. Oh, wow. So, Mike, got to ask you, with Rochester, we've been questioning if they are the real deal, if their strength of schedule has anything to do with their record, yada, 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 yada. They've knocked off one of the top teams, what most people say, the top team in the Bandits, and a solid team win. Are they the real deal? Are you convinced now that the Knighthawks are not only one of the top teams in the league, but a true competitor this season to win the NLL title?
3 letters, 1 word, 2 more words. Yes, and Rylan Hartley. I mean, this game depended on one thing and one thing only. I know we're going to give credit to Rochester's defense, which held the Hilton Anacoke to 1 assist and 6 turnovers and 2 penalty minutes, and they made a lot of guys on that team irrelevant and made the others beat them. Although Josh Burns still did his thing, got the 300 career points, but Rylan Hartley had to step up, and I wouldn't say he stepped up. I say he stood on his head, because the entire second half, he was the reason why they were to rally, especially in that fourth quarter, allowing 1 goal, just absolutely insane. He had to be good opposite his idol, Matt Vince, who reached 14,000 career minutes. Rylan Hartley was incredible, and that was why Rochester won this game, and rightfully so.
Yeah, when you look across this team, and I know we had Holden Katoni on our show before, Ryan Smith, Connor Fields. I mean, this is a team that's winning by committee. Absolutely winning by committee. And they're showing that defense does win games. Having a strong goalie in the way that Rylan Hartley's playing, and what a great moment. You get to play against your idol and beat your idol. Like those full circle moments, we love to see it. And Buffalo is no slouch, from Matt Vince, who, as you mentioned, just eclipsed a historic moment of 14,000 minutes, which is remarkable, to their defense all the way through. We saw them make some changes defensively. And then you have their 3-headed monster, but it did not matter. The Knighthawks showed up, showed out, and also showed the NLL world that they may not have a true MVP candidate as of now, on paper at least, because I think we can definitely argue that they do. But this is a team that's finding ways to win, and that's all that matters. They're doing it by committee as a team.
One thing I want to ask you before we move to the next game is, do you think Buffalo changing some things on the roster affected this game? Or because I don't think the pieces they traded were that significant. But if there was like one little piece of like Buffalo having a moral victory, is wait till we get Adam Bomberg, wait till we get our guys in here. But like I said, this great game, like you said, by everybody on Rochester.
I think this is like, you may have won the battle, but you didn't win the war type of a vibe. But I'm still convinced that Rochester is legit. You know, I think that both teams, it's only week 8. By the end of the season, once we get into the postseason, they're going to look different. You know, whether it's player personnel or just how they're playing, confidence, you know, it's going to look different in a month, 2 months from now. But I think for now, round 1 absolutely goes to Rochester, well-deserved. I think the Bandits do have that to fall back on. Okay, we're going to bring in Adam. We're going to bring in maybe even some other changes, and we're going to be ready next time we play you. But for now, I just think these are absolutely the 2 of the top teams in the league. Definitely favorites to win the East. So I'm loving the way that the season is progressing. On the other side, we talk about, two of the top teams. Well, two teams that are not at the top right now that are struggling, but each now have a win because the Las Vegas Desert Dogs got their first franchise victory, an epic comeback. I was at halftime shaking my head like, why did I pick the Desert Dogs to win this game? But this is why I picked the Desert Dogs to win this game. After dropping the loss to the Warriors last week and Vancouver picked up their first win of the season, the Desert Dogs make a big comeback after trailing by as many as 8 at the half. And we saw Rob Hellier, 2 goals, 7 assists. We saw on the other side, Keegan Ball, 5 points on the day, 5 assists. What a game, what a comeback, and what a first win for the Desert Dogs at home.
My only bet that did not cash this weekend was this game going under. Because I thought Dogs were going to play good defense the entire game and not just the second half. I do have a pull up on our pinned tweet on Twitter. It says most impressive NLL win this weekend. This game is tied with the Knighthawks. Like Desert Dogs are tied with the Knighthawks at 43% of 14 people who have voted so far as the most impressive win. I picked the Dogs because you're not supposed to be able to come back and win as your first franchise win. What a performance by them. And Robert Hellier, and shout out to their social media team for saying hell yeah at the end. They finally caught on to that, so that was good.
I thought that was a thing. I've always said Rob Hellier, hell yeah. But yeah, we're claiming that also. But you know what makes it impressive is exactly as you mentioned, coming back from being down by 8 goals. I don't care who you're playing against. A comeback like that in the league is a really big deal. And on the other side, when you look at that Rochester Bandits game, it was close all the way through, and it might not be, it was more of an exciting game, but not a surprising game because honestly, either team could win. That's why it was a coin flip game for me when I was picking last week. So it was a game that either team could win. You expected it to be tight. You expected it to be back and forth, but no one expected for the Desert Dogs to be down by 8 and that be their first victory for their franchise in the way that they did it.
I feel like the coin is biased like a lot of Buffalo fans. Oops.
The coin is not biased. That's great. I actually started to pick the Nighthawks because I had a feeling sometimes we get so caught up on the flashy, and I'm not saying the Bandits are just a flashy team. They're legit. They're a top team without a doubt. But we also lose sight of the fact that there have been some really great teams in sports over the years that are able to win because they may not have the superstar, but they've got a lot of guys brought in that are talented, that have put the years in, that are hungry for a championship. And that's what I think we are seeing right now in Rochester. Well, lastly, we did see that the Rock continue to do Rock things, but what was possibly the most remarkable part of the Toronto Rock's win over the Philadelphia Wings 14-5, along with Tom Schreiber's 5 goals, 2 assists, is the fact that there were several Philly sports fans that bought tickets to the game to get in early to tailgate for the Eagles' blowout win over the Giants. We've got to be better. Well, I fully understand it because, look, with the Wings game at 7, the Eagles game at 8:20 officially it started. I get it. It also was a divisional round playoff game. This is a regular season game, but I saw the posts and the stories about how many fans didn't even know who the Wings were, but they had bought tickets and they were there to watch the Eagles. That was bad. That was so bad
video. I'm sorry. I give a girl shout out, but good. Can we not post that?
That was a cringy video. And there were many stories that came out around it. I mean, I saw the NLL posted about it. I actually heard people reaching out to me like, hey, did you hear what's happening in Philly? And I'm like, yes, I do. Because the Wells Fargo does share a parking lot with the link and people decided to be creative. But that's no way to support. That's no way to go about it. And the Wings, not only it was adding insult to injury, you lose the game, you don't get a great attendance and turnout, and you lose in a big way. And people don't even know you have a game.
It was interesting because our reports on attendances this morning, according to Daily Dive Lax on Twitter, is Philadelphia did hit 73-30, which I don't know how many of those people were in the arena. I know Rochester, every bit of that 6,948 people were there. That game was packed out. I'm sure Las Vegas was no different. I didn't see much of that game, but I did know that they always packed the house. But I wonder how much of 7,330 were actually in that building. It's nice for money. But 14,
Yeah, but it's like it's so disrespectful to have people buying tickets because they can, and knowing that you are unable to get in early to tailgate for the Eagles game, you buy the ticket so you can get in early, and you have no idea who the Wings even are. So I imagine of that number, several thousands of those people probably were not even setting foot or thinking about going into the Wells Fargo. So I was thinking about that. Like, is this something? Should they be doing more of this? Like doubleheader, Philly sports doubleheader? But no, because you're having people that are doing it for the wrong reasons. I would love if somebody actually went to the Wings game and then actually went to like Xfinity or something, which if anybody's in the Philly area knows about, then went and watched the Eagles game. But don't.
They might have had a few people show up that weren't going to show up. That's the only positive I can think of.
Yeah, that's true. There's a positive. I love it. Well, there are some more positives that we've got to get into coming up because Mike, you had some pretty big demands last show, and some of them came through in a big way, Jeff Teat. So more to come here on Daily Dive, and then don't go anywhere because after that, when we get done our 3 stars of the weekend, we've got our guest joining us, Chris Pomay here on Daily Dive. We'll be right back after this quick break. Welcome back to Daily Dive. We've had a chance to dive into some of the action from this past weekend, and one game we haven't had a chance to talk about yet. The Riptide also get their first win of the season. Look, we've been wondering which team is going to be the last team to get a win. The Riptide get a win this weekend. We talked about the Desert Dogs who got a win this past weekend as well. And more importantly, producer Mike, who's been pleading for his player, Jeff Teat, who he's a big fan of. Let's put that disclaimer out there. Producer Mike is a Jeff Teat fan, which is why he's demanding more from him. He wanted at least 2 goals, I believe it was. And Jeff Teat finished with 7 goals, 5 assists as the Riptide knocked off the Firewolves 16-10. And this segment, as we dive into this game, is presented by B-Res Coffee Company, where you can get coffee to help you get through the daily routine, the hustle and bustle. And you can check out the link in our bio for more information on B-Res Coffee. Well, Mike, you asked, and he delivered. What are your thoughts on how Jeff Teat played this weekend? Was this the Jeff Teat you've been waiting for?
Hell yeah. How about it? I am so happy that Jeff Teat heard this show, watched this show, and clearly was inspired by my fandom. Please, if we sell 1 jersey in NLL this year on Fanatics, it's got to be a Jeff Teat number 51. Even they're all whites look incredible, by the way. What a fantastic game for him. I wondered if when they got rid of Callum Crawford, was Jeff Teat going to all of a sudden do all the scoring? And I guess the answer is yes for now. He still loves the alley-oop play to Lamar Sundown. But I'm telling you what, man, Jeff Teat might win MVP even if they miss the playoffs. He's going to if he puts up numbers like this every week, even if they're losing, and like he just destroys everyone in the points, I don't see how you don't give him MVP. That would be nice if they win more than 1 game, but you get it.
Okay, producer Mike putting out some big claims there that this is an MVP caliber type of game, and if he can continue with that, he's on track to possibly be in the MVP conversation. Now, you mentioned Callum Crawford, and I know we have to get into our 3 stars of the weekend. And before we do so, I have to ask: do you feel like moving that trade for Callum Crawford, which we questioned, losing a veteran, losing a player that's been playing consistent, actually was a move that has helped Jeff Teat was Callum Crawford. I'm not putting it all on Callum Crawford by no stretch of the imagination, but sometimes players don't play well together. Sometimes the matchup and the way that their tendencies and things like that just don't work well. It's a bad mix. And it's not a knock on either player, but are we seeing that immediate impact? Or do you think that Jeff Teat possibly heard you and heard others, imploring him to step up? And that was what made the difference in the win over the Firewolves.
In all seriousness, it's the absence of Callum Crawford. Like, if I'm being fully honest right now, obviously he didn't hear me. His dad might have heard me. That's about it. But I'm pretty sure, I don't know how big star power is in the NLL like that, but I'm pretty sure they did ask the franchise guy, hey, is it, we get rid of a guy like Callum Crawford, are you going to get mad at us? I'm sure they consulted with him just a little bit. And I'm sure he had to not sign off, but I'm sure he had to give a little thumbs up over here to make sure that happened. And maybe it did open up his game, and for the better. But as we know, you also can't do it alone. So there's a lot more to do, but it was nice to see the immediate impact of their moves.
Yeah, and again, it might be something like having the ball more, the way the offense is run now. Those types of changes do go a long way when you've had, a player that you're playing with that you just don't have the right chemistry with. So I could see where it does, and it did make that immediate impact in how Jeff Teat played. And look, for the weekend now, I was 1-3 on the weekend, but you know what? My most important pick this weekend was actually the NFL with the Eagles, and I was correct. So I don't mind having an off weekend in the NLL picks. I was 1-3. I am now 2 games behind you, Mike. You finished 2-2. I started to pick differently, but it's okay. I can own up to that. And Mike, more importantly, you did win 3 of your 4 bets around things that had to happen this weekend, including Jeff Teat scoring at least 2 goals, and he definitely did that. So our 3 stars of the weekend, yeah, exactly. So our 3 stars of the weekend, one by no surprise, as we were just talking about him, and we've highlighted all of these players so far in this episode. Jeff Teat of the Riptide, that 7-goal, 5-assist performance, lifting the Riptide over the Firewolves to get their first win of the season. They've had a very tumultuous couple of weeks, a lot of changes being made, and it seems like those changes have made a direct impact because Jeff Teat is back. Is that what we're seeing here? This is the Jeff Teat that was ranked number 1 coming into the season as a top player in the league. This is the Jeff Teat that we expected that has now worked out of what seemed like a sophomore slump to earn himself a Daily Dive star of the weekend. Star number 2, Rob Hellyer finishes with 2 goals, 7 assists, and helps the Desert Dogs get their very first ever franchise victory. A much-needed win after going 0-4 to start the season. They now get a win over the Warriors and are now sitting pretty moving forward into this week because it's another possible opportunity for them to get a win in their next game. And then another team that's winning no matter what. The Knighthawks, undefeated, the unbeaten 6-0 Rochester Knighthawks goalie Rylan Hartley, who we have highlighted several times on the show already. He's already got a star under his belt. He's someone that has been a major rock and consistency for the Knighthawks and helping them start off the way they have. 43 saves in that game to help the Knighthawks in a statement win over the Buffalo Bandits. He now is just only gave up 1 goal in the 4th. Now has had an opportunity to silence all the doubts and anybody that was questioning the Knighthawks to help lift them to a 6-0 record. Wow. Any of these stars that surprised you? That in the way they played this past weekend, I should say? Not that they got
Rob Hellyer had 10 assists last week and had another 7 this week against the same team. No adjustments, but hey, good job for him.
Yeah, good point there. That's not a great thing for Vancouver, but a very great thing for Rob Hellyer and for the Desert Dogs, especially if he can be the guy to help them out, whether dishing out assists or helping to get goals. So we've seen a lot of remarkable performances this past weekend. The NLL is continuing to heat up with each week as we're watching all the action unfold. And so we have to have a quick break and get a chance to have our guest join us, Chris Pomay, who is a NLL fan, a big sports fan, who's going to be talking about his show and the NLL. So we'll be right back after this quick break with our special guest presented by Fanatics, Chris Pomay. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Daily Dive. We've talked about the action of this past week. Well, now it's time to bring on a dear friend of mine and a great sports coverage reporter. He has his show Live with CDP, which I had the opportunity and pleasure of being a guest on. And I remember earlier this season him sharing his excitement for the NLL season. And now, Chris, we have a chance to have you on the show to break it down. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm not used to being the guest. This is only the third show I've been a guest on. It was really nice when I saw my message this morning from Michael about coming on, and I appreciate the opportunity to come on here. I'm still learning about the National Lacrosse League, so I'm by no means an expert, but I really love the sport. It's like a combination of hockey and basketball, and I'm hooked on it now.
I love that. And look, you're a sports fan. You know, you heavily follow Philly sports. You heavily follow a lot of different sports. And so exactly as you mentioned, you're picking it up. And that's what I love about having you on the show, because ironically, I've been working with Mike, and for all those that are tuned in watching, we try to bring a lot of different types of guests on. We try to bring on the analysts, players, coaches. We try to bring on reporters and other sports personalities like yourself, Chris. And now, as you mentioned, you are a new fan of the NLL. I believe you mentioned the Bandits were your team when we spoke earlier this season.
Got my Bandits hat on, yes.
Yeah, you're repping Buffalo. They unfortunately dropped the loss to Rochester this past weekend, but what has you most excited as you are learning about the NLL from what you've seen so far?
It's a great entertaining game. I've been to a Rock game in Hamilton and in Buffalo, and the PA announcers. I've had Chris Swanson on, by the way, from the Buffalo Bandits. Good guy. The PA guys make the in-game play is awesome, and then the game. The word I'm looking for is the in-game presentation with the public address announcers and then the music. It's like a party atmosphere, and you never look at your watch when you're at a lacrosse game, because sometimes you go to a sporting event or a movie, you're looking at your watch, which isn't a good sign. But with the lacrosse, I just love the game, and everybody thinks it's all fighting in that. It's not. It's a physical sport, but it's a very skilled sport, and I'm hoping the league continues to build. And I've been really lucky to be involved with some of my guests, like Pat Gregor from TSN. He's the reason why I got into the National Lacrosse League, and John Garkler, the voice of the Buffalo Bandits, had me down to a Bandits game last year to cover the game as a media. And Brandon Shanahan's brother, Brian Shanahan, who's a Hall of Fame lacrosse player here in Canada. And I've recently had Brian Glasheen from the National Lacrosse League on ESPN on, and Ashley Miller and Bud Bailey. So I've had some media people from the league on, and I'm working on hopefully getting some players on as well.
I love it. And I love how you are not only learning the game, but helping to grow the game, as you talk about having great guests on. Brian Shanahan, as you mentioned, a Hall of Famer, a big name in lacrosse, and Pat as well. Many names, as you've talked through, players and analysts and just legends of the game that you've been able to connect with, which shows a lot about the work you're doing with your show. And I know I've been a guest on your show, and you do a tremendous job of reaching out, connecting with so many different people, so active on social media, which is something that I think is in itself a talent, that you are constantly having conversations with so many different people all over the world. Can you tell those that are tuned in about your show Live at CDP?
Yeah, live with CDP Sports Talk. It started almost 3 years ago, but it was by accident. I was doing some volunteer work with a local semi-pro basketball team here, and they wanted me to do some camera work. And they actually liked my camera work. They paid me for it, and then they referred me to Rogers TV, which is a big cable company here in Toronto, in the Toronto area where I live. I started doing camera work, and I'm like, hey, I like being a part of a live broadcast. And then before the pandemic, a month
Mm.
before the pandemic struck the world, I told my producer, I said, I'm going to start my own podcast. He goes, yeah, sure, whatever. And I did start it on Instagram. I wasn't very good. It was called Chris's Corner, and it was just on Instagram. And Pat Gregor was one of the guys that watched it, and it wasn't very good, but he just told me to keep going at it. And eventually I started getting one guest on, and then it just started to work on it. The Philly sports guy, Jamie Pagley, he's
Mm.
one of the Eagles' biggest fans. He is a podcaster, and he kind of got me onto StreamYard and gave me some advice. And he's one of my influences here as well. So 3 years later, I've done 238 episodes, and I've been lucky to have so many people from the media side, sports in the States, in Canada. So my podcast is kind of an international podcast, and I've been very lucky. And now the National Lacrosse League is one of my favorite sports to have on my podcast show as well.
Oh my goodness. Well, congratulations on all the growth and success. And it's not easy working in the podcast world, consistently dropping episodes, getting tremendous guests on, and you're doing it. So congratulations to you on that. And also being able to expand, as you talk about, of being open. I even love that you said, like, Chris's Corner wasn't so great when I started, but look at you now, so even being open to learning and evolving and having chances to grow, even the content that you're talking about on your show. And that is why you are a big guest presented by Fanatics today on Daily Dive, because you are taking a dive deeper into the NLL, learning more about it. So far this season, I want to get your quick thoughts on who you think the best team is in the NLL as of right now, and who would be your MVP frontrunner if you had to pick a player?
Okay, my two top teams right now in the National Lacrosse League would obviously be Rochester and San Diego. Out of San Diego, out of the West, they're 4-1, and obviously Rochester's 6-0. And my MVP right now, I'm a little biased here, but I would go with Josh Byrne, because I think he's really stepped up his game this year, especially with the loss of Connor Fields to the Rochester Knighthawks. But I'm so happy that Rochester franchise is doing well. The other night, they got their first ever win against the Bandits, and I just think it's great for the sport there. And Josh Byrne has been outstanding. Obviously, the great Dane Smith has been well as well. But to me, as of right now, to answer your questions, Rochester's the top team, and Josh Byrne, I would go with MVP for now.
Yeah, and like I keep saying, until somebody beats Rochester, they have that number one spot. Being undefeated, 6 games now that they've won. It's not a 1-0 or 2-win undefeated streak. 6 games this early in the season that you win is tough. And so until somebody can prove us otherwise, they are, I agree, the top team in the league. And it is great for the NLL to have a team at the number one spot right now that had a tough season last year and struggled to win games, that now is 6-0. And as you mentioned with Josh Byrne, playing tremendous lacrosse, him and Dane Smith, the dynamic duo, absolutely MVP frontrunners. And so it is exciting to watch as the season unfolds. My last question for you before we wrap up is, which team do you feel like is the worst team? I know it's hard to talk about, but who do you think is in that struggle, on the struggle bus right now, across the NLL? I know we've talked about the Riptide, the Desert Dogs, the Warriors, the Swarm. Is there anybody that you've seen so far that's just got you shaking your head?
Well, everybody would say Vegas because they're an expansion team, but I would say right now, in my opinion, would be the Georgia Swarm. They're 0-4, and that's kind of a surprise. And the New York Riptide too. I thought they would be a little bit better of a team as well. But I guess right now, to answer your question, the Georgia Swarm, since they're 0-4 and they haven't won a game yet. But one thing about the Rochester team before I wanted to leave, let you go, against Buffalo, they were down in that game 8-4, 8-5 at halftime. In the second half, they limited the Bandits to 4 goals in the second half, 3 in the third period or quarter, and then 1 in the final quarter. And that's not easy to do because the Bandits have an explosive team. So, but to answer your question there, definitely the Georgia Swarm as of now, but there's still plenty of time for them to turn around. It's still early in the season yet, and there's still opportunities.
Absolutely, Chris. Starting 0-4, they are, as we know, the final team that is winless across the NLL, which is something we've actually talked about on Daily Dive. Who would be the last team undefeated? Rochester. Who would be the last team winless? The Swarm. And so, as you mentioned exactly, not only on paper, but just from what we've seen, haven't been able to get over that hump to get a victory yet. And I agree with you. Rochester not only winning to knock off Buffalo, that game was special for many reasons. We saw a team that was able to make a comeback, that down to the wire back and forth game, and able to come away with the win. So Chris, thank you so much for taking time to join us on the show. We'd love to have you back on again in the future. Keep up all the great work that you're doing to help have these conversations with your show and out on social media. And excited to see how your teams, as well as the rest of the NLL teams, continue to progress this season. So thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to watching more games on the TSN Game of the Week or tsn.ca here in Canada, and I guess in the States, ESPN. But again, Renee, thank you so much for having me on here. Same with Michael. I really appreciate it, and I'm now subscribing to your show, and I'm looking forward to watching it weekly. So I appreciate it. And go Eagles. I'm a huge Eagles fan since 1979, and I'm almost tempted to go to Philadelphia this Sunday to see them play the Niners.
Do it. It's going to be an incredible game at the Link. Philly's going to be out of this world. There's been fireworks. There's been a lot of commotion. Everybody's happy. It's like the holiday season all over again. Everybody's smiling and happy and letting people pass them and opening doors for each other. Not really, but it is exciting nonetheless. So thank you, Chris, again. Go Eagles. And looking forward to continuing to see all the work that you do. So
thank you again. Thank you so much, Renee and Michael, for having me on the Daily Dive today.
Absolutely. And thank you all for tuning into Daily Dive. It's been a week, that's for sure. We've seen some highs, some lows, some wins, some losses, some surprises. We've got a still undefeated team. We've got a winless team in the NLL. And we've got an Eagles team that's headed to the Super Bowl. But that being said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. For our guest of the episode today, Chris Pomay, be sure to check out his show, Live with CDP Sports Talk. Be sure to subscribe to Daily Dive at Daily Dive Lax for a new episode each and every day, Monday through Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And we'll see you back here Tuesday for more lacrosse chatter as we talk about what's going on around all things lacrosse. So have a great one, guys. Thanks for tuning in. For producer Mike, I'm Renee Washington saying see you later and see you next time. Bye, guys.